Welcome back to the Storm Tracker podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin, representing for CanesCounty.com, part of the rivalries.com network. And this is our weekly segment called Scouting the Opponent, where we talk to an expert of the opponent of the Miami Hurricanes. And this week we've got Kevin Stone, who joins me from Boston College Rivals, and he also writes for the New England Football Journal. Thanks for joining me today, Kevin.
Marcus, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
No worries. Now, Miami, Boston, there's some rivalry, maybe some hate in some aspects as well. I mean, this past year, Kevin, it's been kind of crazy between the two sports fan bases. And, you know, especially with the Miami Heat, man, like the Heat and the Celtics kind of going back and forth. This past year, the Panthers and the Bruins kind of had a thing going. This particular rivalry, but the Hurricanes at Boston College, it spans all the way back to the 80s. And right now, you also cover the Patriots, right, Kevin?
Yep, I do.
Yeah. So, first of all, man, with everything that's kind of gone on with Boston sports, you know, what are people really talking about? And in the past year, I guess what kind of hurts the most between some of the Miami sports teams and the Boston sports teams? You know, what kind of, I guess, burns the most?
So for me, it's the Bruins, especially after last year, such a historical season. And then obviously to see it go down the way it went down, that one still stings. Ironically enough, they're actually playing Florida tomorrow night again. So good timing on your part. But look, I'm not a huge basketball guy. I'm a Boston fan in general, so the Heat losses don't necessarily hurt all that much. And then as far as the Patriots and Dolphins go, I figured it's your guys' time, or at least it looked that way for a little while. We had 20 plus years, so now covering the team in my third year, it's very different than being a fan, as I'm sure you know, covering the Hurricanes. It's just you have to kind of separate that fandom. It's not easy, but so the losses, the loss earlier this year to the Dolphins, it didn't necessarily hurt. Although I thought we had you guys in that week 2 Sunday night matchup, but that was not the case. But it's a good, healthy rivalry. As far as the Red Sox and Marlins go, it was 2003. We should have met each other in the World Series, and that didn't happen. But we're always happy to see the Yankees lose. So I still give you guys credit for that year. And Josh Beckett was a huge part of a World Series here too. So I have nothing but love for Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the Marlins as well, because the Marlins, finally made the playoffs, and the Boston, I guess, finally didn't make the playoffs. It seems like they were always in the playoffs year after year. I'm kind of a Boston fan as well. My wife is actually from Boston, so I actually kind of cheer for them as well. But when the Patriots and Dolphins play, we're a house divided on that day.
I hear you.
Yeah, and even with the Celtics and Heat as well. She still is kind of a big Paul Pierce fan. I am actually not, but yeah, fast forward to this game going on Black Friday, which is kind of interesting in itself, a Black Friday game. Oddly enough, Miami Hurricanes play and the Miami Dolphins play and the Miami Heat also play on the same day. It's actually the first time ever that those three teams play on the same day. But tell me a little bit about Boston College, because they were on a win streak kind of in the middle of the year. At the beginning of the year, everybody kind of seen them battle with Florida State, our rival, of course. And then, two games, I hate to say this, but they were kind of duds, I guess you could say, as far as what they produced on the field. From your perspective, Kevin, what's been going on with the Eagles in the past 2 games?
So it's sort of the story of Jeff Hafley's career here. The head coach for BC. It's his 4th season, and then there's a lack of consistency across the board. It's weird though, because as you well know, the COVID years 2 years ago, it turned college football upside down. And this BC team, they've had 3 straight bowl appearances under Hafley. including this year, but they haven't gone to a bowl yet. Both of their bowl appearances were canceled due to COVID in 2020 and 2021. So it's a fickle fan base. It is not a college fan base by any means. So there's not a ton of attention here for BC. And the problem with that, I think, is the higher ups, above the coaching staff and the people that, sort of shell out the money around here. The baseline for success is mediocrity. 6 wins and people are fine. It's not like Miami or Florida State where, it's ACC championship or bust. It's just not that way here for BC. And as far as what's gone wrong, they've had a ton of injuries. They also brought a new quarterback in. Emmett Moorhead was supposed to be the starter. He was all through training camp. They brought him to ACC Media Day as their QB1, and then 2 series into the season, they sat him down for Thomas Castellanos, who was from Central Florida, a transfer. I can't believe he left there, or they let him leave there, because he's been phenomenal for this team. The only problem with him, he's not really a passer. He's a runner that plays quarterback, if you know what I mean. So there's some work to be done there as well. They're just, honestly, they're not that talented. When you're recruiting here at BC, you're not going to get the kids that Miami's going to get, that Florida State's going to get, really that any other ACC team is going to get. A, because of the atmosphere here, it's not conducive to college football. And B, the academic standards at BC, it's too much. So it's a little bit of everything. I know that's sort of a long answer, but it's just sort of a little bit of everything. And it's not conducive to major college football around here, unless it's a year, like 2007 when they had Matt Ryan and they were, a nationally ranked team. Unless there's a special season, there's just not going to be a lot of, I guess, intensity or clamoring for Boston College coverage around here. And I think the product on the field kind of shows that as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the honesty. Miami is somewhat similar as far as it being basically a pro town with a major college football team in it. But we care about the Miami Hurricanes, I think, a lot more than maybe other, sports pro towns care about their college football team. It may not show in the stands as much, but Miami is a strong fan base on Twitter, and just with TV ratings as well across the country. The Hurricanes definitely care about their team and how they produce. But you talked about Castellanos a little bit, and from what I've seen, like you said, he's more of a mobile quarterback, but he was pretty underwhelming, I guess you could say, against Pitt. What went wrong in that game, in that loss to the Panthers?
A little bit of everything. And it's funny, too, because last year, the offensive line was the worst offensive line maybe BC has ever had. And if there's one thing BC is known for, it's called O-line U for a reason. They pump out draft picks left and right when it comes to the big guys. So, to your point, it was very kind of worrisome to see them struggle last week against a 2-win Pitt team. Castellanos is injured. He's got a banged up calf, and I think he's still kind of recovering. If you watch that game, or if you watch previous games and then watch, what he did the other night, he just isn't as mobile right now. Usually he can escape the pocket and avoid sacks and really kind of hurt people with his legs. He's having trouble doing that right now. And then even designed runs, they're slow developing. If you watch that Pitt game, there's a lot of time where he's got a hole and he just can't hit it. So like it's showing right here, he's just not as explosive as he has been. Don't get me wrong. He brings an element to this team that they haven't had since Doug Flutie in the 80s in terms of a mobile, a running quarterback. Every other quarterback they've had, you go down the line, Matt Ryan, Brian St. Pierre, Matt Hasselbeck, they're all pocket passers. So it's a one thing that they have not had yet, and he's brought an entirely new dynamic to the offense. They're a run-first team. you're going to see it on Saturday. They might throw the ball 10 to 15 times, and that's it. They're going to try and pound the football with him and with their running backs as well. He's slowing down a little bit. I think the year is just kind of catching up to him. But he definitely brings an entirely new dynamic to BC. And again, he's only a sophomore, so he's still kind of learning on the fly as well.
Yeah. So he, had a great performance, I thought, against Florida State, and he had some great performances kind of this season in some wins for the Eagles. Which game do you think was his best game? And what really, you really kind of alluded to it already, but what makes him so dangerous or hard to stop?
He's just, I'll answer your first question. His best game is probably that Florida State game. That was the team's best game overall. The University of Virginia game, they were down, I think, 14 at the half. Virginia had a Hail Mary right before halftime. The state's dead, although it's usually dead. Anyways, they're just not a very good fan base. But that was probably his other best game. They really came back against UVA and sort of showed some fight. But Florida State was his best game by far. What makes him dangerous is he's in that group of athletic quarterbacks that I guess we see everywhere now, really. More and more kids are going to camps and running spread offenses, but they're also developing kind of a running style I think you see everywhere now. You might be able to tell me better with Miami and Florida high school football, which is a lot bigger down there than it is up here. Most of the kids here are running spread offenses now. So if you're not running a spread, you better know how to move out of the pocket pretty damn quickly. And I think he's just kind of one of those, another long list of guys that has modeled his game, after a Mike Vick, after even a Colin Kaepernick back in the day, 10, 12 years ago. He's just, again, he's another kid in a long line of quarterbacks who is now run first, pass second, I think.
Absolutely. But dangerous nonetheless. And Miami has had some trouble with stopping a running quarterback. I'm sure they'll be prepared for that come Friday afternoon. But let's talk about the defense a little bit. What kind of defense does Boston College run, and what should Miami fans and the Miami team kind of expect on Friday?
So right now it depends on who's healthy. They're extremely banged up, especially in the secondary. Their best cornerback, Elijah Jones, had some off-field incidents. He's now done for the year. He had 5 interceptions and was honestly trending as a day 2 NFL draft pick. So they had their top corner down. Their top safety is now down, Cole Batson. He didn't play against Pitt. There's either 4 or 5 freshmen and sophomores playing in the secondary. So if Miami wants to throw the ball, they should be able to throw all day. In terms of running, the Miami running game, the defensive line is probably BC's best strength. But again, injuries have hurt them as well. Chisawa, their best player, out for the year. He was hurt, I think, 2 weeks ago. So really, I'd expect Miami to have maybe not an easy time, depending on the weather up here, but they shouldn't have much trouble moving against BC. It's one of those things where it's so late in the season, everybody's banged up, but BC is especially banged up right now. So in terms of what they run, I honestly can't tell you right now because I don't know who's going to be on the field on Saturday. It's that bad injury-wise. So it's sort of a makeshift, put everything together and hope the young kids in the secondary can kind of hold on. But I'd expect Miami to be able to move the ball pretty easily against this team.
That's definitely music to a lot of Hurricanes fans' ears to say that. I did want to ask about Castellanos' injury. How long ago did he suffer it, and what is it exactly?
So we were told, well, I shouldn't say we were told. It's a calf injury. He has a sleeve on his calf. I believe it was 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4. I'm mixing up my bye week, but it's not gonna look. He's going to play, and he'll seem mobile, but he's not as mobile. And again, if you watch the earlier games compared to the last couple of weeks, you can see he's definitely hindered a little bit The Florida State game you're showing now, again, that was his best performance. It was also kind of his breakout game, if you will. And that team was down by 21 points at one point in the fourth quarter and came back. So it's one of those things where, as long as he doesn't jump back into the transfer portal, which is very possible, as you well know these days, kids can go in and out like it's nothing. He was talked about for a few weeks as sort of the next big thing around here. And just as an example, Zay Flowers was offered 6 figures to leave last year by, I believe, Miami and one other team. I can't confirm that exactly, but what I was told is they were one of the teams that were involved in talking to him, and he turned it down. So if a guy like Zay Flowers is going to get offered that, well, if you have a sophomore mobile quarterback who, if he gets better as a passer, is now one of the best players in the ACC, people are going to be knocking down his door. So while the injury is there, it's nothing major, I don't think. But it has slowed him down a little bit. But if anyone's going to be able to move the ball for BC, they're going to have to rely on him and Kai Robichaud, the running back. They really just don't have a downfield passing game. And again, part of it is because he can't move very well in the pocket right now. Part of it is just there's a lack of talent at receiver too. Again, I know that was a long answer, but he's healthy, but not fully, 100%. I don't think.
No, great stuff. Great stuff. So yeah, you mentioned Zay Flowers, that's a kid that I'm very familiar with from down here playing high school, kind of, got my feels through this industry through covering high school football. So I covered him while he was in high school, very familiar with him. And I can confirm that Miami was interested in him, transferring back down here to South Florida. Unfortunately, he chose to stay up there, and it worked out great for him because he was a first-round pick, and he's tearing it up in the NFL now for the Baltimore Ravens. You mentioned Robichaud as another playmaker for the Boston College Eagles. Of course, Castellanos is one. What are some, besides Robichaud, or tell me a little bit about him, and also any other playmakers that could be dangerous for the Eagles come Friday?
So one guy that would have been a huge playmaker, who's now out for the year as well, is Ryan O'Keefe, a guy who is a speedster, who I'm sure you're familiar with as well. Another speedy guy who was supposed to kind of be their deep threat this year. He had a scary neck injury in the UVA game, I believe it was. Carted off the field, and it just sort of chosen to sit out the rest of the year and make sure that he's good to go. He was their second best playmaker by far. To be honest, it's probably Lewis Bond, receiver number 11 for BC. He's their best receiver overall now. And then Dino Tomlin, son of Mike Tomlin, the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. Wow. He's kind of come on lately and been a pretty good weapon. But again, their downfield passing game without Ryan O'Keefe to kind of take the top off the defense, it's a struggle. They do not have any tight ends really that can hurt them. George Takis was their main tight end. He is out for the year as well. Jeremiah Franklin is their second tight end. Not really a pass catcher, more of a blocker. This offense runs through Kai and Thomas Castellanos. Kai is a throwback. If you remember A.J. Dillon a couple years ago for DC, who's now at the Packers. He's not Quadzilla by any means. He's not huge, but he is a guy that runs hard, runs downhill. He'll put his shoulder to people. And again, that offense, if they're going to move the ball, it's because of the offensive line, because of Castellanos, and because of Robichaud. But do not expect any huge passing plays out of this team. If this has like 17-10 written all over it. If BC is going to win, if Miami wins, they'll be in the 30s, I think.
Gotcha. I mean, you already kind of gave me your prediction, which is going to be my next question for you, Kevin. I mean, it's an 8-point spread right now. I'm kind of a betting guy myself, and home dogs are scary. I usually will be on the side of a home dog here. So I think Miami has the edge, but I think, like you, based on your score, I think they keep it close in this game just because it's the ACC, right? I mean, last week, Pitt kept it a touchdown game, or BC rather kept it a touchdown game with Pitt. Miami, continues to battle in close games week after week. How do you think it ends up on the scoreboard when it's all said and done Friday afternoon?
So it's funny, leading up to this game, the past, 3 weeks or so, I thought the spot was really tough for Miami. Day after Thanksgiving, cold weather game, noontime start. But BC is just so banged up. And Miami, I do think, has more talent. I see Miami winning the game ultimately. But again, I think if they're going to win, they're in the 30s. But if BC is going to win, it's like a 17-10 game, like I just said. Like, if that makes sense, there's two very different games that could kind of play out here. I don't think weather's going to be a factor. It'll be chilly, but, Miami isn't – they're not adverse to cold weather. I know they don't play in it often, but, it's not like it's going to be 15 degrees and snowing. They'll be fine. Again, the spot is a little weird for me in terms of a team traveling up here. Again, the day after Thanksgiving, a very early kickoff. That's the only reason I would think maybe BC covers. And, usually I buy into the whole senior day and stuff like that. But I go back to it. BC just doesn't have a true college football atmosphere. They'll be lucky to have 20,000 people there this weekend. The stadium holds 45. It'll be half full, if that. And it's just sort of the nature of the beast around here when it comes to BC. Sure. So kind of combining all of that, I'd be surprised if Miami didn't win just because they do have more talent. But again, I do go back to the spot, and if BC is going to cover, I think that's why.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Miami is motivated because, they've lost now a few games in a row here. And, I think they want to be on the right track. And the one thing that travels with football teams is the running game, and that's been pretty strong for the Hurricanes. What hasn't been so strong, it has been the passing game with Tyler Van Dyke. And I wanted to ask you, with Tyler Van Dyke being a Northeast guy himself, are you familiar with him at all? Did you see him in high school? Was he recruited by BC?
So I believe he was recruited by BC. I didn't personally see him, but I knew of him pretty well. It's hard not to, again, as a Northeast guy, when high school football is very, very tight-knit around here in all 6 states, really. He worries me a little bit, again, against this BC secondary. I go back to the weather. You're not going to have any, windy conditions that should be a factor or anything like that. So I expect him to have a good day. Again, this secondary is really banged up and really young. So I know I'm heaping a ton of praise on Miami. Now watch, BC will come out and win by 40, and I look like an idiot. But I think Miami's just more talented, and I do think him of all people, I think he should have a big day against this defense.
Yeah, for me, I think that's the X factor, because last week we saw Tyler Van Dyke finally look like Tyler Van Dyke. I think he's been, ran through the mud here as far as fans are concerned and criticism. Besides last week, he finally kind of bounced back, but then, the defense, kind of fails him and they lose to Louisville. So I think he's back on the right track. When we kind of interacted with him in the press conferences, he seems like he's in a better headspace now than a few weeks ago. And now he gets to return back to, his home area, and he's plenty of friends and family, I'm sure, will be in attendance. I think we're going to see a big game from Mr. Van Dyke. And I think that is going to be the difference. So I do appreciate you coming on with me, Kevin. Great stuff from you. Make sure you follow Kevin Stone on Twitter, and also find good stuff from him on Boston College Rivals, as well as New England Football Journal. He covers the New England Patriots as well. He's a busy man. He was kind enough to spend some time with me today. Thanks, Kevin.
Hey, thank you, man. This was awesome. And, hopefully we can talk again soon.
Absolutely. Once again, that's Kevin Stone joining with me for our weekly segment, Scouting the Opponent. Once again, make sure you subscribe to this podcast, the Storm Tracker Podcast, on all platforms. Until the next episode.